Hi guys, welcome to another video. I'm out here in the woods again doing some more mushroom macro photography, and I'm actually heading to a very specific spot in this woods because the other day I came here to do some photos and I saw a load of mushrooms on this one tree, but I decided not to photograph them there and then because they're very reflective, so I thought I'd come back with a circular polarizer because I didn't have it out with me on that day, and that should do the job for that sort of mushroom. So I'm out again. I've got my circular polarizer and I'm just trying to find where those mushrooms are now. Right, so I found a spot where those mushrooms were the other day and I thought they were on this bit that's really high up, and I thought I'd have to use a bigger tripod, but luckily they're down here, so it should be very easy to photograph. And as you can see, there's quite a lot, but the other day there was actually even more. It was only like 2 days ago I saw them, but in 2 days a lot can change because mushrooms are very come and go. So I think I'm going to photograph these ones here because I really like how the bigger one is sheltering the small one. And the one on the right, I ideally wouldn't want it there, but I can always Photoshop it out if I really want to. But we'll see how it looks in the composition anyway. Right, so I've got my composition and lighting all set up now. And I'm just going to quickly show you the effect of the polarizer. So I'm just going to do a video on this camera here and then spin the circular polarizer. And as you can see, the top of the mushroom has some reflections. And as I begin to spin it, those reflections start to go away. So it really cleans up the image. And the problem with these mushrooms is that they're really wet and reflective. So you get loads of harsh reflections in the mushrooms. But with the polarizer, I can eliminate those and make the mushrooms look nice and smooth. For my lighting, I've gone for quite a simple setup. I've placed my cube light to the left, slightly behind the mushrooms on the second highest power. And that's just giving the left side of the mushroom a rim light. Then I've got one of my Adaptalux pod minis in the same sort of position, but on the right. And that's doing the same sort of thing, so adding a rim light, but to the right of the mushrooms. So all I've got to do now is focus well before the mushrooms are in focus, and then press my shutter button to start the focus bracket. And then in a moment, probably about now, I'll press the shutter button again to end my focus bracket. I'm really happy with how that shot turned out, and while the polarizer isn't doing a massive amount to this image, it's the small details that matter. So, you know, setting up your lighting right, getting your polarizer out, getting the right composition, all these small details matter for the final image. For the past like 15 minutes, I've been trying to figure out what mushroom to photograph next because it's just so awkward with all this, all these twigs and that and trees in the way. So I've actually just cleared a lot of the twigs and stuff out of the way and got my camera down there because I want to photograph these two here. They look really photogenic, so I'll photograph them. And with my composition, well, I can't really do much. I want to get more left really, but with the composition I've got here, I've got these ones in the background, so I've got those ones and those ones, which looks quite nice, kind of evens out the frame. I've got something on the right and something on the left. So yeah, we'll set up the lighting and get to photographing it. Right, so I've set up a couple pod minis and I've done the same sort of thing. So I've got one on the left slightly behind the mushroom and one on the right slightly behind the mushroom. That has the same sort of effect, so giving a rim light on both sides of the mushroom, making it stand out from the background. I've turned my circular polarizer to eliminate the reflections on the top of the mushroom, and I've got the composition all set up, so all that's left to do is to focus just before the mushroom's in focus, and then press my shutter button to start the focus bracket. And that should only take a few seconds, hopefully. That looks like it's done, so press the shutter button again, and there's our image. Those mushrooms are extremely awkward to photograph. It's hard to get your camera in the right spot and get your lighting set up. So I think I'm going to move on to something else now. And I might come back to these mushrooms later on if I struggle to find something. But I don't think I'll struggle because I've seen loads of mushrooms about just walking in general. So, and also while I was photographing those mushrooms, I noticed loads of tiny ones just above my head on this branch here. So there's loads of these tiny like grey ones growing out of this tree, and they're going to be quite awkward to photograph because they're high up. I will be able to get my camera high up because I brought my video tripod, which is big, but I won't be able to get my lighting set up properly. So I might photograph some down here because I did notice a couple down here. I don't think they're as photogenic, but I will be able to get my lighting set up quite easy here. So we'll see what we do. Right, so I've decided to photograph these two little mushrooms that are high up. And setting up the camera was fine because I'm using my big tripod. It's got enough height on it. But the lighting was quite awkward. At first I was trying to balance it on my bag to get the height. That was too awkward, it kept on falling off. And now I found a solution. I've just wedged the light in between this other log that's meeting this tree. And then I've bent the lighting arm around to get the exact angle I want. And that seemed to work perfect. So yeah, we're all set up now. I've decided to shoot landscape and then have a lot of negative space on the right, which is going to be out of focus. And then I'm going to have the small mushroom on the bottom left and then the bigger mushroom on the top left. I think this is the first time I've used this tripod in a video. And if you're wondering what it is, it's the Freewell carbon fiber travel tripod. I'll leave a link down below in the description to this tripod, along with all the rest of my gear. So I'll focus just before the two mushrooms are in focus. And now all I've got to do is press the shutter button to start my focus bracket. And then press it again about now to end the focus bracket. It's quite a short one there because both the mushrooms were on the same sort of focal plane and they're very small, so didn't really need to bracket many images for that shot there. Since it took me so long to set up the lighting for this shot, I'm going to get a second shot of the same subject. So this time I'm going to go for a portrait orientation, just in case I prefer that over the landscape one, because when I was setting up the landscape one I wasn't really too sure about it. What I've done a little differently here is I've moved the camera slightly outwards from the tree, just so I have more of the moss in the background, because I wasn't really a big fan of the black background. I like the green of the moss in the background, it looks quite nice. Right, so I've got everything set up and all that's left to do is to press the shutter button to start my focus bracket. And then in a moment, about now, I'll press the shutter button again to end my focus bracket. You might have noticed my shutter speed was really slow there, and I do actually get a little bit of motion blur when I first press the shutter button, but because I focus well before my subject's in focus, it's only the first few images that are a bit blurry, and those ones aren't going to be used in the stack anyway. By the time it reaches the subject, my camera is steady and all the shots are sharp. So I've decided to photograph another one of those mushrooms on this tree, and I've just found one on its own on a bit of moss, which looks really cool. So I'm going to photograph that, and I'm going to shoot portrait and get really close to it to get all the details. And I'm going to go for quite a low down composition to get the sky in the background. So I'll have hopefully some blue colour in the background. And setting up the lighting for this shot wasn't too awkward. I just placed my light on this log here and then bent the arm over to light up the mushroom, and I placed a diffuser on the end of the arm just to soften the light. It was quite easy to set up this shot compared to the other ones, because my main goal with this shot is just to get as close as I can to the mushroom and capture as much detail. So there isn't much creativity in this shot. It's generally just set up my tripod to get as close as possible and put the lighting there and get shooting. So all I've got to do now is focus just before the mushroom is in focus, and then press my shutter button to start my focus bracket. And I'll press that again about now to end it. That was very quick. And yeah, I quite like that shot using the sky in the background. The blue contrasts the green very nicely and makes the mushroom pop. And the lighting was quite simple. I kind of just lit it from above just to make it stand out a bit more. I'm now going to photograph this cup fungus. I think that's the name, not too sure. It looks sort of like a seashell. It's really cool. And I actually found this a while ago when I was photographing the first lot of mushrooms. When I was clearing away all the twigs and stuff, I found these little mushrooms on this twig, and I left them to the side so I could come back to them later. I'm going to keep the lighting quite simple for this shot. I've got one pod mini to the left here without a diffuser on, and that's lighting up the top left of the frame, and there's now quite a lot of shadows on the bottom right of the frame. So what I've done is brought in another pod mini with a diffuser on, and that's just filling in some of those shadows and revealing the detail in the subject. I've noticed that I've got a bad habit of using the same aperture for every single shot, so I'm going to change it up for this shot and actually think about my aperture. I'm going to use about f8 I think, because I'm going for a top-down shot and I don't need lots of depth of field. I kind of want to see some of the background elements, so I think f8 will be good for this shot. I'm actually going to hold my hand here because when I block the natural light out, it actually creates quite a nice shadow inside of the little cup. So I'm going to keep my hand there. I'll focus well before the subject is in focus, and then all I've got to do is press the shutter button to start my focus bracket. And it shouldn't take long, it's already gone past the subject actually. So press the shutter button again, and we're done. I'm really happy with that shot. I think it looks really clean. And I like the composition as well, how the twig goes from the left to the right of the frame. Then you've got the fungus dead center in the middle. I've just found 3 mushrooms here and they look really nice. I like how they're growing out of the branch and you've got the moss all around them. So I think I'm going to go for a composition that's sort of like a flat face-on sort of shot, sort of flat perspective to show that. I was originally going to go for like a side angle, but I feel like this composition shows off the scene the best. I was messing around with some lighting, but to be honest, I feel like natural light works the best. So I'm not going to use any lights for this shot, and I'm just going to use natural light. And I might as well chuck on my circular polarizer because that can reduce some reflections and bring some contrast and colours to my image. The only problem with using my circular polarizer is that it actually darkens the image because it's quite tinted. So my exposure is coming out to 1.3 seconds with an aperture of f5.6 and ISO 200, which is extremely slow. That's doable though because I'm on a tripod, but it just means the focus bracket will take a little bit longer. So I've got my composition all set up now, and all I've got to do is focus well before anything's in focus, and then press my shutter button to start the focus bracket. And it's going to take quite a while, so I'll just cut to when the sequence is finished. Alright, I think that is enough images. That took probably like a minute. And yeah, I'm really happy with that shot. I think the composition just looks really nice. And all the mushrooms are spaced out evenly, which looks really satisfying. I've just found this really satisfying looking mushroom growing out the side of this mossy tree stump. And I think this is the first subject I've photographed outside of that area there, because just over there by that tree behind me is where I've been photographing everything in this video. And I've been in there for hours, so I thought, you know what, I need to get out of there. I'm going insane. So it didn't take long to find something else there, literally just right here, a few steps away. And for this shot, I'm going to be using a simple lighting setup, just one cube light with a diffuser on. And I'm not really angling it straight at the subject. I'm sort of letting the light leak onto it because I want it to look quite natural, the light, rather than artificial. Right, so I'm going to focus well before the mushroom is in focus, and then press my shutter button to start my focus bracket. And it shouldn't take too long because I'm not really that magnified. There we are, that's enough shots. So hit the shutter button again, and I'm pretty happy with that shot. For my composition there, I had the mushroom on the left, and then left loads of negative space on the right. And that's because there's a little hole in the tree stump that was acting as a leading line towards the mushroom. So I placed that on the right so it would lead towards the mushroom. I've just found a group of mushrooms and they're really satisfying because they're spaced out so nicely. So I'm going to shoot this one portrait. I've got my cube light behind on the second highest power. And that's not doing too much, it's kind of just adding a rim light to the log that it's on. Then I've got my Adaptalux Pod Mini here, which has a diffuser on, and that's just lighting the stems of the mushroom because it is quite dark here. And composition wise, I've positioned my camera to have the sky in the background on the left and the right, and then a bit of grass as well behind the mushrooms so they stand out. Because if I had the sky behind the mushrooms, then they're the same sort of brightness as the mushroom and they'd blend in. I've noticed quite a few bugs crawling around on the mushrooms, and it'd be nice to include one in the shot, but it's hard to predict their movements, and I'm using quite a slow shutter speed. I think, yeah, 1/13 is probably not going to freeze that motion unless they're staying still. So I'm just going to take a shot and hopefully I'll capture one. Right, everything's set up now, so I'm just going to focus well before the mushroom's in focus, and then press my shutter button to start the focus bracket. And it shouldn't take too long, it's not an incredibly deep stack. So about there is good. I'm going to press the shutter button again to end it, and I'm really happy with that shot. There wasn't really much to do composition wise because the mushrooms just look so good. Like no matter how I photograph them, the composition is going to look good because the mushrooms are spaced out nicely. On this same log, I've just found two tiny little mushrooms, and then in the background there's two bigger mushrooms. So one thing I'm doing is getting a composition where I've got the two small ones in the front in focus, and then the two big ones in the back out of focus. That will just show off the scale of the mushroom really well. Lighting wise, I've set up one of my Pod Minis with the diffuser on, and I struggled to find a good lighting solution. This is what I've come up with. I've pointed it at the floor, and that's sort of just giving a slight edge light to all the mushrooms in the shot. And then I've got my cube light quite far away here because it's so bright, and that's just lighting up the edge of the right of the mushrooms. As you can see, my tripod is upside down. That's so I can get my camera really low and get the composition I want. But everything seems to be set up, so all I'm going to do is focus well before the mushroom is in focus, and then press my shutter button to start my focus bracket. And I'll end it probably once I've focused well past the 2 small mushrooms, because later on I might decide that I want to focus stack the mushrooms behind it, and if I have all those frames, then I have the choice to do that. So that's why a lot of the time I focus bracket way more images than I need to. So that looks like enough shots now. Hit the shutter button again and we're good. That's definitely a contender for my favourite image today. I just really like the contrast between the small mushrooms and the big mushrooms out of focus in the background. Right, so I found some more mushrooms on the same log. Honestly, there's so many mushrooms to photograph on this one log, it's crazy. And these are really photogenic as well. We've got 3 mushrooms, 2 quite big ones, and then a tiny one in the middle. It just looks really nice. And I've come around the other side of the log because I can see the stems from this side. The other side, I can only see the tops. And lighting wise, I'm actually using the exact same lighting setup as last shot, because those mushrooms are only to the right of these ones. So lighting wise, that works perfectly for this shot. And yeah, everything's set up now. So what I'm going to do is focus just before the mushrooms are in focus, and then press my shutter button to start my focus bracket. Shouldn't take too long. I think about in a second, just let it get well past the mushrooms to ensure I've got every shot. There we are. Press the shutter button again, and I'm really happy with that shot. So I think I'm going to end today's video here. I've been in the woods for about 5 hours now, which is a lot longer than I usually spend taking photos. And I think it was worth it though. I've got some really nice shots today, and some portfolio worthy ones for sure. Let me know what shot's your favourite. I'll be interested to know. But as always, all the equipment used in today's video will be linked down below in the description, and those are affiliate links. So if you buy through them, I'll get a small commission and no cost to you, which will help support the channel. So make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.